Hey everybody, welcome to episode 91 Average Guy and my average guy opinions. I am your average guy, John Corelli. Um, as the sun sets on not only a day, it also sets on a month. It is March 31st as I'm recording this. I'll probably get this out to you tomorrow for April Fool's Day. And this is not an April Fool's joke for any Jefferson High alumnus that tuned into this. We lost a really, really amazing teacher this week. Not sure the exact day he died, might have been even a week or two ago. But Mr. Heath, Mr. George Heath, who was the embodiment of the crazy 80s teacher. He was so great. He was a history teacher at my high school. I don't know how long he taught there. I don't know when he retired, but I think he was there quite a while. He taught like basic like civics class, some ancient history, stuff like that. The basic history classes. Now he was born, I saw, in 1937, so I guess that puts him at 83 or 84 years old. Pretty nice, decent long life, and just a very memorable teacher. Nobody had anything bad to say about Mr. Heath. I remember him because for whatever class I had him in, that's why I think it was some ancient history, because he would talk about Caesar becoming czar. I don't know if you guys remember this. I'm sure quite a few. He would go into this just like this stuttering fit. It was really funny. He didn't actually stutter, but he would go, you know how Caesar became czar over the years. It's like, and then, Caesar, because the czar was like the leader of Rome. The czar was the leader of Russia, and so he's like, it was Caesar, 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 Czar, 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 and he would do stuff like that. He did the same with Istanbul and Constantinople, which was very entertaining. That's how it became that way, and then he would explain it though, so you learn stuff in there. I always thought Mr. Heath was an easy A. But maybe he's part of the reason I wanted to become a history teacher. I never did. I got my degree in history, but I never finished my teaching certificate. I am lucky enough to work in a high school with special needs kids, though, so that's pretty great. I'm also finding I'm kind of glad to be a paraprofessional and not a full-on teacher, because teaching is very difficult. All the standards, all the testing, all the standardized testing, all the stuff you have to do, and still just take loads of shit. It's not worth it, so I'm glad I am doing what I am doing. But back to, I'm not only going to talk about Mr. Heath because I don't have much else to say about him. My personal interactions with him were rare. I think I only had one class with him, but it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in that class. He made history fun, and like I say, maybe that's part of the reason that I am where I am today, or at least got my education. That history department overall was insane. There's a movie called Teachers. I don't know if any of you remember. It's from the 80s. Joe Beth Williams is in it. Nick Nolte's in it. And it's insane. And it really, I think, kind of encapsulates what 80s teachers were like. I mean, just our history department at Jefferson High alone was nuts. I'm not going to name names because I don't feel like getting sued over a stupid 10-minute video. I've already had to take one video down this year because somebody disagreed with what I had to say about another person who passed away. Not going into that. So I don't, like I say, nothing bad to say about Mr. Heath. I will say some facts about some other people in that history department. Won't name names though. Two, not one, but two history teachers in my tenure there. I was only there. Here's another thing you got to know about Jefferson. Jefferson at the time in the 80s when I went there was just 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. The feeder school, a couple of feeder schools that fed in Lakewood High, Wheat Ridge Junior High, where I went, or excuse me, Lakewood Junior High. They were true junior highs. They weren't middle schools. They were 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So the freshman class there was no freshman class in high school. You went straight to being a sophomore. We had about 600 students at my school, about 200 per grade. And but history department was crazy. A lot of the teachers were just crazy. The standards weren't what they are now. I mean, we still got all kinds of nutty people, trust me. I work with some of them. And we also got people doing terrible things once in a while. A few years ago, we had a guy molesting kids in the middle school that feeds my high school. Dude's having sex with a 14-year-old, and it's disgusting. And it got covered up by the one of the vice principals, and they settled, I think, for $11 million. Yeah, if you don't want to lose your job and bankrupt your potentially bankrupt, or at least financially injure your school district, just have a little fucking control and don't have sex with minors. Just saying. But yeah, that's something that happened at my school twice. Pregnancies were pretty rare in the 80s. I mean, obviously they're at an all-time high, but things got really crazy in the 90s apparently. We had a couple of girls get pregnant in our school. It wasn't a lot, but two of those girls were by teachers. Both of them history teachers, both of them social studies teachers at Jefferson High. Won't name them, but these were men around 30 having sex with women around 18, and these women decided to have the baby. That's all I'm going to say about that. Those of you who went there know who the hell I'm talking about. I'm not saying any more than that. But that's just some of the wackiness of of the 80s and what it was like to be in high school there. Maybe that's part of the reason I wanted to become a history teacher. Man, I'm going to get so much 18-year-old tail when I'm 30 and teaching school. No, that was not part of my thought process. We also had a conspiracy theorist, which was not popular for the Kennedy assassination. I will not name that teacher either. And then we had another teacher that I found out later when I was working at the Tivoli 12 Theaters was a crossdresser in his spare time. So quite an interesting group there. And I can think of one other that was kind of a misogynist. Out of all of those teachers, the conspiracy theorist was by far the coolest teacher. It was nuts. People back then, teachers would say really ridiculous things. I can't remember all of them, but it was just things. I remember one teacher, one of these history teachers, called me the Pillsbury Doughboy in front of the entire class. I was a chubby kid. What the hell? Really? That was okay, and you just were supposed to kind of shake it off, and I did. But I can't imagine that happening today in my high school. I look at how much it's the tail is wagging the dog, you guys. I watch how much shit some of these teachers take. We can't even take their phones. They got kids in gen ed classes, just even in special ed classes, just looking at their phones, and you tell them to stop, and they're all practically. They might as well. I mean, it's insane. It's like you should be able. You don't need your phone at school. You do not need your phone at school. You want your phone at school. You don't need. And this is where I go into society and wants versus needs and blah, blah, blah. No, I'll just keep talking about the wackiness that was Jefferson High and some of the teachers. I had a horrible Spanish teacher my junior and senior year. We had a great one sophomore year. She was awesome. She was energetic. She involved everyone. I got A's and B's in her classes because she made you give a shit about learning a second language. And she unfortunately went for greener pastures and ended up at she said she was going to Green Mountain High School, which I assume is true. We loved her and she left, and we had a woman coming in her place who just sucked rocks. She was a terrible teacher. She taught in like groups of tables, like 5 different tables with 5 kids out of each. She'd come to your table one day and another table another day, and she just played favorites horribly. I made a piñata. We had like end of the semester, we're gonna have a party, and I made a piñata, and the reason I made the piñata is I said, hey, well, I'm in this class 3rd period. I'm in Spanish 3rd period, and then 4th period I have off. So that way, if the piñata doesn't get broken in 3rd period, can I come into 4th period and at least be part of it, since I'm putting my effort into making it and putting candy in it and shit? And she's like, yeah, sure. So the 3rd period, we have our party. They somehow don't break the piñata. So I go, yeah, remember the agreement we had? She's like, no. I'm like, well, I have 4th period off. I just want to be here for my piñata that I made. No, she's a fucking bitch. I'm just going to say it. And I got straight F's in her class because she was not a good teacher. She was not a good teacher. I will not name her either. Counselors were crazy. Principals were crazy. Everyone was crazy in the 80s. Maybe it's because it's sort of like this is coming around like 30 to 40 years later where we're like, fuck it. Who gives a shit, right? Let's get students pregnant. Who cares? We're all going to die of AIDS or nuclear holocaust anyway. I mean, and that's a theme I've hit on before, but I really do think that was part of the reason the 80s were kind of awesome. We had a lot of fun in the 80s, man. Look at the music we listened to and the clothes we wore. I had a lot of fun in the 80s. I had fun in the 90s too. Still having fun today because luckily I found a job that I love with way less insane people than that worked at Jefferson. We got a few crazies, but the standards are higher. Like I mentioned before, you got to have a teaching certificate. They probably do personality tests on you. At least they should. But you gotta be pretty decent at what you do and pretty sane at the same time. Anyway, there's my little It's a small homage to Mr. Heath, but it's also a big homage to what it was like to be in high school in the 80s. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, yo. Yeah, 16 Candles. All that shit. Breakfast Club. See you guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.